Primary data, qualitative versus quantitative research. Primary data are originated by the researcher from the specific purpose of addressing the problem at hand. Primary data may be qualitative or quantitative in nature. Qualitative research provides insight and understanding on a set of problems, whereas quantitative research tends to number data and specifically use a form of statistical analysis. Qualitative research is carried out to explain the findings obtained from quantitative research. Even though qualitative research findings are often misused when they are considered as a conclusion and used to make the population which was researched publicly. However, quantitative research and qualitative research, when used side by side, can provide adequate insight that can help formulate a good marketing strategy. Focus group interview. The main purpose of this interview is to find out all the information by listening to a group of people from the target market to discuss the problem presented by the researchers. The focus group technique is an important component in qualitative research. Next, there are key qualifications for focus group moderators. First of all, kindness with firmness. The moderator must combine a disciplined attachment with understanding empathy in order to generate the necessary interaction. Second, permissiveness. The moderator must be permissive yet alert to signs that the group's cordiality or purpose is disintegrating. Next, there are involvement. The moderator must encourage and stimulate intense personal involvement. Next, incomplete understanding. The moderator must encourage respondents to be more specific about generalized comments by exhibiting incomplete understanding. Encouragement. The moderator must encourage unresponsive members to participate. Next, flexibility. The moderator must be able to improvise and alter the planned outline amid the distraction of the group process. Last, there are sensitivity. The moderator must be sensitive enough to guide the group discussion at an intellectual as well as emotional level. Next, we're going to discuss about planning and implementing focus groups. Starting with observation of the research objective, in most cases, the problem is determined at this stage. If so, then general statements and other components need to be considered carefully. There are also other variations in focus group. First, two-way focus group. This method allows one group to listen and learn from the other groups. Next, dual moderator group. One of the moderators is responsible for running the session smoothly and the other one making sure some issues are being discussed. Next, respondent moderator group. The moderator is chosen from the participant group. Next, there are client participant group. Client members are classified and involved in discussions with the role of offering clarification that will make the group process more effective. Next, there are also mini groups. This group contains one moderator and 4 to 5 members. Next, telesession group. In this interview, it is a discussion session via telephone. Lastly, there are electronic group interview. In this interview, keypads and other electronic devices are in use in detail in the session. Next, I'm going to discuss about the lack of focus group. First of all, it tend to be misused. Focus group can be abused and harassed by considering the result as conclusive rather than exploratory. Next, misjudge. The result of focus group discussion can be more easily misjudged than the result of other data collection techniques. Focus groups are very vulnerable to client and researcher bias. Next, moderation. Focus groups are difficult to moderate. Moderators with all the desired skills are rare. The quality of the result depends very much on the skills of the moderator. Next, it tends to be messy. The unstructured nature of responses makes coding, analysis, and interpretation difficult. Focus group data tends to be messy. And lastly, misrepresentation. The results of focus group discussion do not represent the general purpose and cannot be projected. As a result, the result of focus group discussion should not be the sole basis for this decision making. And last, I'm going to discuss about advantage from focus group. First, synergism. What it means is that it produces a wider range of information. Next, snowballing. Comments by one person usually trigger a chain of responses from other participants. Next, stimulation. Usually after the introduction, respondents will express their feelings about the topic to be discussed. Next, we offer security. They feel comfortable, so they are happy to pass on information. Next, spontaneity. Because participants were not asked specific question, their answer can be more spontaneous. Serendipity. Ideas will appear by themselves more often in groups than individuals. Specialization. What it means is on focused group, we use only trained interviewers. Scientific security. Group interviews make it possible to conduct surveillance which will be used for data analysis. Interview structure. Next, interview structure. What it means that it allows topic flexibility but is in a controlled environment. And lastly, speed. Because more individuals are being interviewed at the same time, it means that it saves more time for the researchers. Thank you.
Qualitative data analysis. 3 general steps that must be followed when analyzing qualitative data. 1. Data reduction. This step, the research choose which aspect of the data are emphasized, minimized, or set aside for the project being handled. 2. Data display. In this step, the research develops a visual interpretation of the data using tools such as diagram, charts, or metrics. The screen helps to illuminate pattern and interrelation in data. 3. Image of conclusion and verification. In this step, the research considers the meaning of the data analyzed and evaluates its implication for the existing research question. Marketing research. Chapter 6. Survey method. Survey method to obtain information based on respondent. Question. Respondents were asked various questions about their behavior, intention, attitude, awareness, motivation, and demographic, and lifestyle characteristics. Survey method. Classified by administration model. 1. Telephone interview. 2. Personal interview. 3. Letter interview. And 4. Electronic interview. Observation method is the second type of methodology used in descriptive research. Observation involves recording the behavior patterns of people, objects, and events in a systematic way to obtain information about interesting phenomena. Structured observation versus unstructured. Structured observation. Research specify in detail what must be observed and how measurements should be recorded. An example is an auditor who conducts inventory analysis in a store. Unstructured observation. The observer monitors all aspects of the phenomenon that seem relevant to the problem at hand. For example, observing children playing with new toys. Disguised observation versus not disguised. Covert observation. Respondents do not realize that they are being observed. Disguising allows respondents to behave naturally. Because people tend to behave differently when they know they are being observed. Observations that are not covered up. Respondents are aware that they are being observed. For example, they might be aware of the observer's presence. Organizing data. In organizing data, there are practical application of centering size and size variation, data presentation, and centering size. Data. Some information that can provide a picture of the situation or situation. There are several components. 1 variable, 2 method of collecting data, 3 data type, or measurement scale. Variable. Variable is a character that will be observed from the observation unit and really needs to be determined when making observation. Variable can be divided into two. One, continue variable and discrete variable. When observing variable, divide into two. Main observation and cursory observation. Continue variable. A variable whose magnitude can stem a value that exists between 2 points and is obtained from the result of measurement. An example in the accumulation of saving interest in a certain year. In this variable, we can find fraction value or integer value. Discrete variable. Variable whose amount cannot equal value and is always an integer. This variable is obtained through enumeration. An example is the number of restaurants in Semarang in 2001.
Method of collecting data is actually divided into two forms. The first form is primary data. Primary data is taken from the first source that can be taken from individuals through the result of interviews or the result of filling out the questionnaire. In addition, the implementation can be in the form of surveys or trial that can be taken by the researchers themselves, in the field or in the laboratory. Examples are age, education level, sex, and type of work. The secondary data is primary data obtained from other subject or primary data that has been processed and presented by other parties that are usually displayed in the form or tables or diagram. The examples of secondary data is data are obtained from the result of research by other people or reliable sources such as government, agencies, and BPS. The next things that I want to explain is type of data. Type of data is actually divided into three forms. The first one is qualitative and quantitative data. Qualitative data is for the classification only. The examples of qualitative data is data for a work of a person has, and the quantitative data is the form of numbers and data that measure intervals and consolations. The example for quantitative data is a restaurant company advantage. The second one is internal and external data. Internal data is data obtained from within a company or organization that carries out research. The example for internal data is worker productivity. And the other is external data. External data is data that is clean about circumstances outside and the organization that are usually obtained from other parties to be used as a comparison. The third one is time series data and cross-section. Time series data is also called time series data obtained from several stages of time. The example of time series data is data on a company pants imports to Malaysia from 2000 until 2017. There are 4 scales of measurements. The first one is nominal scale, ordinal scale, interval scale, and the last one is ratio scale. After carrying out research, the data has been collected need to be displayed in an easy form understood and read by those who need it. The several forms of data presentation is frequency distribution table and graphs. The frequency distribution table is actually most widely used alternative form in the form of data arrangement and has been separated with certain classes or categories. There are several lanes in that, is the first row of variables under study. The second row is so on about absolute, relative, and cumulative frequencies. And the last line is presents the middle value. Two forms of frequency distribution is qualitative frequency distribution or category, and the second one is distribution of quantitative frequencies or numbers. There are some of graphic forms. The first one is histogram, ogive, polygon, leaf stem diagram, line box diagram, and pie chart. Calculate average. The average count in the dataset contains the number of data values divided by the numbers of observation. Median is the middle value of the observed value, arranged regularly according to the size of the data. Modus is the value that has the largest frequency in the dataset.
And next is about average measure. Usually, this method is used to measure the rate of change of average ratio. And next, weighted average. This method is almost similar to the average calculation, and the difference is the use of this method if each data is not as important or not the same quantity. And next is size variations. This is a measure of centering that is used to present a summary of data from a single value that shows the average distribution. The size of this variation states how far the observation value deviates from the central value, and divided into two. The one is size of absolute variation and size relative variation, and has several types that are range, average absolute deviation, and variance and standard deviation, and coefficient of variation. Next is absolute variation size, divided into two. There are absolute variation size. A measure of absolute variation is used to compare a size variation with another size variation in the same population. The size of absolute variation usually depicts the same unit of measurement, for example, like kilograms, rupiah, and ton. Next is size of relative variation. While the size of a relative variation is used to compare some measure of variation from several populations to units measurement as difference. Next is range. Is a form of the difference between the maximum value with the minimum value and a data group. Next is mean absolute deviation or MAD. There is repression, the total amount of each deviation, the observed value of the average divided with many observations. And next is variety and standard deviation. Variance is the sum of the squares of the difference in the value of observation with the calculated average divided by number of observation, and standard deviation is the root of diversity. Next is variation coefficient. Is a form of a relative variation size that has the purpose of comparing the variation of several data groups that have different units. And next is quartile. Quartile are values that divide a data that has been sorted into 4 equal parts, so that in the data set there are 3 quartile and 1 median. And the last is practical application of centering size and size variation. Centering measure values and variation size are able to provide information that has been discussed and can be used to provide information about forms of data distribution and other use. There are many types. There are form of data distribution, use of the Poisson coefficient, Chebyshev proof, empirical rule, and the last is standard score.